Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lisa Lord from the Public Affairs Department. Thanks so much for joining us. We will be addressed by Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor-Motley, as well as Health and Wellness Minister, Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostick. We will begin with Minister Bostick.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I am here to report that we have an additional 9 positive cases today out of a total of 365 tests that were conducted overnight at the Best Dos Santos Public Health Laboratory. 84 persons remain in isolation. The stats that we are seeing today are consistent with what has been happening over the last several days. And I'm happy to report that for the past 7 days, that the positivity rate was around 2%. And this is encouraging news, although we still would like to see it below that. I also want to say that one of our goals, which was to reach 25 cases per 100,000 population, that we are now averaging around 39, which is below what was reported the last time that we spoke to you. So we are going in the right direction, but there's still some work to be done. I would like to take this opportunity also to say a big thank you to those members from the church in the north that I referred to a couple of weeks ago, who heeded the call and actually presented themselves for testing. Some of those persons actually tested positive and have been part of the statistics that we've been given out over the last few days. And I say a thank you to them because really and truly, if we are to successfully navigate this course in terms of COVID-19, then we depend on each and every one of us to be able to play our part. And we continue to be affected negatively by the fallout from the positive cases coming from that church. And I can only describe that kind of behavior and what we have observed as being irresponsible and reckless. It's behavior that we cannot tolerate, behavior that we would not like to see happening again in this country, where all of us are being put at risk. So that you would have heard about the cluster of security officers and the stressed security officers at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. We now have a total of 11 positive cases from the security guard section at the hospital. And there has been a link, and there is a link between the security guards and that cluster and this church as from the north. We also had 3 cases from the nursery, and all of those are being managed at this point in time with people being tested and awaiting second test results. But all of the cases and all of the institutions are connected to the church in the north. So I'm just appealing to everyone and to all organizations, irrespective of your discipline or your calling, to follow the public health protocols and to report any matters to authorities so that we can deal with them quickly. Thank you.
And thank you as well, Minister Bostick. Also joining us is the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honorable Dale Marshall, who will speak at this time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My role here this evening is fairly limited. I'd like to remind that we are operating, and all of our directives are based on the foundation of Barbados being under a state of emergency. The Governor General on the 26th of March issued her proclamation, but under the laws of Barbados, her proclamation is only valid for 30 days and therefore expires on the 25th of April, just 3 days away. You will know that we propose to bring a new set of directives, this will be directive number 10, in place from the 27th. And therefore, in order for us to legally have further directives in place, we have to extend the state of emergency. We've had extensive consultations with all of the health officials, and we thank them for their constant vigilance. And you will appreciate that given the factors that are very much in the mind of the Minister of Health and his Chief Medical Officer, as he's just outlined, it's going to be important for us to extend the state of emergency. And therefore, Parliament has been called back out from its Easter recess to meet tomorrow morning at 11:30 for the purpose of debating a resolution to extend this current state of emergency by a further 5 months. And so long as that resolution is approved, the state of emergency would continue from the 26th day of April until the 25th day of September. These are not decisions that we take lightly. They're decisions that we take armed with the best information available, mindful always that the interests and lives of Barbadians is of paramount importance to us. So therefore, just to reiterate, tomorrow Parliament will, in a somewhat of an extraordinary session, be recalled from its Easter recess to debate a resolution to extend the state of emergency by a further 5 months. And this is, as I said, to provide the legal foundation for the directive which will come into place from the 27th of April. And the specifics of that the Prime Minister will now share with you.
Thank you very much, AG. I want to say good afternoon to everyone and to say that it is that time again for us to begin to discuss what will happen over the next few weeks. We promised you always that we would shut down sharp and open back up gradual. And I think that you realize, in accordance with the data that the Minister of Health has been giving us, that we have been seeing appreciable improvements week by week. And that is in fact what has made the travel advisory issued by the CDC, the American government, so difficult to swallow. And I'd like at the outset to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for their very strong statement with respect to that advisory which was issued earlier, and to indicate that it is surprising given the extent to which we have been able to bring our cases down. And in fact, I think the Minister of Health referred to the fact that our number of cases per 100,000 inhabitants over the last 14 days has further dropped since the last time. Marginally, not as much as we would have liked. Last time I spoke to you, it was 40.7 cases per 100,000 over the 14-day period. This time it is down to just about 39. We believe that there needs to be greater effort to bring those numbers down. But having said that, we certainly are in a far better position and would not be found it difficult to believe that that kind of strong travel advisory could be meted out to us and many other countries across the world where there has been appreciable improvement on the part of those countries. Having said all of that, let us get back to our own situation internally. We feel, therefore, that we will continue to gradually open, recognizing that those cases that we are still having, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, are linked to behavior that the Minister of Health has indicated. And it is really unfortunate when we have persons in the society who are prepared to put at risk other members of the society, other families, other members in the community. In this particular instance, it was a church, in circumstances where to do so may in fact be putting the person's lives at risk in a serious way. So I trust and pray that all of us have watched on and have learned and will ensure that we don't, as a nation, have to deal with these difficult situations again. Against this background, we are therefore going to announce measures that will run not for 2 weeks now, but for 3 weeks. We're extending the period for which we are adjusting, and therefore it will run from the 27th of April to the 17th of May as a result, subject of course to Parliament tomorrow agreeing to the matters which have to be agreed, as the Honourable Attorney General pointed out, in order for us to move beyond the Governor General's, Her Excellency's proclamation. During the period, therefore, of the 27th of April to the 17th of May, we are extending and postponing or pushing back the curfew on Thursday to Sunday nights. Will now start at midnight instead of 11 p.m., and the curfew will run from midnight to 5 a.m. from technically, really, you're talking Friday morning, which is Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday morning. That is for the avoidance of doubt for anybody who may be confused by what I'm saying. The Attorney General will, however, ensure that the directives appropriately capture that, so that we are saying push the curfew back from 11 o'clock at night to midnight at night. So from tonight, not tonight, from next week, sorry, the curfew starts from midnight and it ends at 5. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday still remain without curfew. We've also agreed to open back up drive-ins, the drive-in, and the cinemas, and they're subject to some very stringent protocols that have been established by the Chief Medical Officer and the COVID monitoring unit, including, I'm told, ensuring that no more than 25 persons remain in the concession area where food or drink are supplied within the cinemas or the drive-in at any one time. And those areas will be heavily monitored by the COVID monitoring unit. We're also, with respect to churches, agreeing that communion can take place, limited to individual servings of the sacrament, and I believe that the Ministry of Health is reaching out to the Barbados Christian Council and the Evangelical Council to ensure that there is no misinterpretation as to what is being permitted by the Chief Medical Officer. Similarly, baptisms may resume with masks and face shields to be worn by all persons, including the officiants, but there is a noting that where possible, where baptisms can take place outside, then we should seek to do so outside wherever possible. In addition to that, we're conscious, my friends, that National Heroes Day is on Wednesday and it is a public bank holiday. And May Day is the following Saturday, and that too is a public bank holiday. And that normally at this time we would be going to all kinds of activities, ranging from reggae festival to all kinds of things that would cause us to want to be able to loosen up and free up, because we're now realizing that 4 months of the year gone and we've worked hard for the 4 months, and we want to be able to have wholly freeing up to quiet activity. There can be no picnics, no excursions, no karaoke's, no fetes, no parties. And why? Because we are not yet out of the woods. So I'm appealing to all Barbadians. We're not putting restrictions on the beach. We're not putting restrictions in the park. But we're asking persons to recognize that the gains that we've made since the 31st of December and now are too many for us to put it at risk. We have asked for a larger than usual presence in terms of persons ensuring that during the bank holidays people remain doing what they're supposed to do. You know, you can go to restaurants, you can go to cook shops, you can eat food, you can do shops if they're open, but you cannot be involved in karaoke or fetting or that kind of activity that the AG has prohibited in his drafting of the directive. I'm therefore asking persons also to recognize that these two bank holidays really are perfect days for us to continue apace to clean up, especially around our houses or our neighborhoods, and to recognize that this dust, regrettably, is still going to be with us for a while. As I say so, I extend my concerns and our thoughts to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines who had another eruption today, and we recognize that we were fortunate not to have received the dust. I'm concerned that the dust may have gone in the direction of St. Lucia, but we're still waiting for reports as to exactly what has happened with that dust from that eruption today. And it's largely because the eruption was not strong enough to propel it right into the stratosphere such that the dust would move east and come back to us. With respect to other activities, we are going to recognize that the time has now, subject to the prohibitions that I'll announce in a second, all sporting activities may resume for practice only. Sporting bodies must submit the intended protocols to the COVID monitoring unit for the prior approval of the unit. Having said that, we're not yet in a position to allow basketball, netball, wrestling, rugby, or horse racing, and for different reasons. Yes, football and cricket can continue, but for practice, not tournaments. So over the course of the next 3 weeks, practice and training. Spectators will not be allowed at any sporting activities. However, essential support personnel for the sporting training may be there. In the case of squash, I've been advised that the practice only means with only one person on the court at any given time, as opposed to both persons being there. And we would expect similarly that boxing and martial arts training can continue, subject to the following restrictions: that there is to be no contact bouts, non-contact shadow training is allowed, and non-contact work with coaches is also to be allowed. I remind you, as I said, that nightclubs and discos, I don't know, there's something called a disco anymore? Nightclubs and bars, and those entities that are purporting to be a nightclub, like a bar that purports to be a nightclub only, will not be allowed to operate as a nightclub. With respect to the school situation, as you know, we were getting ready to open up this week, and up came the ash, and we therefore deferred the opening. This morning, the Minister of Education's officials, I think, met with the unions and recognized that given the state of cleanup across the 74 schools, we are not yet ready to be able to have children back in the school plant next week. And to that extent, there were a number of issues that they confronted as they reflected. There was still a high level of dust in the environment, and even where cleaning had started, as many of you are discovering, as many of us are discovering, that the breeze still blows through and is blowing dust back into areas at a high level, especially where there are big open areas, and most schools have pastures next to them. There's also been a case of low water pressure. In some cases, the unavailability of water at a few schools that have affected the commencement or progress of the services, and I'm going to come back to the issue of water shortly. Playing fields that have been near schools, as I said, have made it difficult for them to continue with the kind of progress that they expected, and it's part of the problem that we faced at the airport, quite frankly, because those large open spaces, especially when the wind takes up, will see the ash and dust coming back into the environs even after you've cleaned. And of course, unpaved car parks and roadways that are not cleaned of ash will also result in more ash blowing and permeating spaces that have already been cleaned. There's also been some difficulty with the unavailability of equipment to assist with reaching all of the tall trees, and all of those things are also affected. So in summary, we have agreed that school will commence online from April 27th, with teachers being requested to report for duty online on the 26th of April. The Ministry of Education, I expect, will reinforce this information to the public. Let me say that I really feel for our children, and it is therefore going to require extraordinary support on the part of all of us, because they have had their tuition displaced not just by COVID, but now by the ash at critical times for some of them. And to that extent, I expect that all of the stakeholders will work seamlessly in the Ministry of Education to ensure that we are in a position truly to be able to reinforce and to close the gaps that might have existed over the course of the last year with respect to the education of our children. On the issue of vaccines continue apace. We have indicated, for example, that we would literally ensure that everyone who got their first vaccine would receive their second vaccine. I am aware that those second vaccinations have started this week, and therefore we anticipate that over the course of the next 8 to 10 weeks in particular, that we will see most of the persons in Barbados who would receive their first vaccine receiving their second. There were also, as a result of the difference, another set of people who are benefiting from the COVAX vaccine, and we are still awaiting delivery of the other vaccines, as you know, that we have been negotiating or contracted to purchase, both with respect to COVAX, the African Medical Supplies Platform, and intermediary private sector suppliers that we've been waiting on for some time. We do hope that we can see progress on this. Vaccine equity is really still the biggest global issue, because everyone recognizes that there will be no real recovery of economic activity globally or nationally for most countries if there is not the level of vaccine equity that will allow us to be protected against all of the different variants and mutations. I think that we were aware, and the Chief Medical Officer reinforced that we will not drop our guard with respect to the variants. I am aware that CARFA, as well as the Canadians, have been working with us with respect to being able to deal with the testing for variants. Thus far, it is only the British variant we have found here, and we continue to pray that we won't find any more. But if we do, we will have to deal with it, as you know we shall, as we have done for the last 15 months. With respect to the other matter with that is of concern, and the AG is here and others are here, the government has been dealing with a number of issues, but the most important of which is water. And we recognize that obviously with the ash, there was a heightened and unusual demand for water in the country for persons who just simply needed to clean around them, clean their surroundings, and to be able to use water in the most natural of ways. Problem is that once we did that, we were placing inordinate demand on the system, and that compounded a situation that was already bad for some persons. On Monday this week, I had a 6-hour meeting with the Barbados Water Authority and with all of the major private sector players involved in allied aspects of the water and supply and storage of water in this country. And we also met with the unions there at that meeting. A number of measures were settled upon, and I'm not going to go into detail to all of them now, except to say to Barbadians that in the same way that I promised you that we would deal with the transport problem, and we did, and in the same way that I promised you that we would deal with the South Coast sewage system, and then we did, and in the same way we promised you that we would deal with the garbage problem, and we did. We are dealing with the water issue. But I've said over and over, with the best will in the world, a twiggling of my nose will not give me the powers of Elizabeth in order to be able to command that trenches are immediately dug from Vineyard to Mount Pleasant, and thereafter to Golden Ridge, and thereafter to Castle Grant, to be able to ensure that either new mains or existing mains are replaced in order to guarantee supply to Castle Grant. With the best will in the world, we are waiting now to start the mains that have to go from St. Stephen's Hill to Lodge Hill, which will allow ultimately for water to go into the mains to go to Shop Hill, such that the people of Bagatelle and Qulan and those other areas will get water. Of course, Castle Grant supplies the majority of St. Joseph and a few other surrounding other parishes. Similarly, last week we had the Hope temporary desal plant offline. That plant is back online again, and that has made a difference in the last few days to the volume of water that is available. We have made decisions with respect to the temporary desal plants, as well as for the renegotiation of the contractual terms for the permanent desal plants. But when those negotiations are finished, we will report back to you on the timelines for those. Might I say that in addition, we've insisted that the Water Authority increase the level of delivery of water and ensure that the tanks that were there are all appropriately serviced, and more tanks are put into the field so that those communities that have been without can be immediately serviced, recognizing that the permanent solutions are in the near future ahead of us. But even as we do that, other decisions have been made, and in fact, the authority had already purchased a number of trucks, which we've asked them to increase the numbers, particularly given the difficulties with the reservoir levels and with the ash. And in addition to that, we've also asked them to recognize that they have to have better communication with communities with respect to what is being provided when and how. My office has been pressed into service in being able to help with that matter, and I continue to take daily reports recognizing that the trucks may not get here. For example, the first set of trucks will probably not get here until the end of May, and recognizing as well that with respect to the reservoirs and the filling of them, that work at Vineyard remains critical for the people of St. Joseph to get water, and the people of Shop Hill, the people of Bagatelle and Welch's, Edge Hill Heights, Shop Hill are dependent on the Shop Hill Reservoir to get the additional water coming from the Ionics plant, which will come from the Lodge Hill Reservoir once the pipes run from St. Stephen's Hill to there. The bottom line is, my friends, that we will get past this, and I know it is difficult. I can't imagine anything more miserable than that. And as a result, when the ash hit and persons recognized, even in the heads of government meeting when I spoke last week, that this is one of the most serious issues facing the country, we were very glad that the government of Guyana, who has once again stepped up to the plate, cases of bottled water came in. Of course, being one of the closest countries to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we also, before we had the problems with the ash, would have had and committed to send them water in circumstances where many people there don't even have access to any proper shelter as a result of having to be evacuated from their homes. Recognizing that, our brothers and sisters in Guyana have sent up, and I believe that came in today or yesterday, and will be dispatched this weekend to households. In addition to that, we are in the middle of concluding arrangements with the government of Dominica for the purchase of water on a weekly basis, 2 to 2.5 million gallons a week, until such time as we can complete the reservoir and the pump station with Vineyard and Castle Grant being serviced with the appropriate water coming through Golden Ridge from the Vineyard point. That will mean that we will be taking water from Groves. There is a well field at Groves that can give us another 2 million gallons a day, but until such time, as I said, that work finishes, which we expect in the near future, and certainly within the next 3 months, that will be completed. Then we can hopefully discontinue these kinds of temporary and transient means of providing water to the people of St. Joseph and to the people of surrounding areas in Boscobel. They've also had some issues with the Hope back on. That will ease us, and we are hoping also to have a temporary solution to supplement in St. Lucie what we're doing that will help in the north of the island. So my friends, it's not easy, but it wasn't easy when we were dealing with the South Coast Sewage Project either. And it wasn't easy when we inherited a situation that left us with less than 12 garbage trucks functioning, when we know we needed at least 34, 35, but preferably more, closer to 40. I'm told by the minister today we have over 43 or 44 trucks servicing the country daily as we speak. We have another 13 buses, I believe it is, coming in June on top of what we already have. But we've seen what a difference it has made to have those 33 buses in terms of persons' access to transport in Barbados. And of course, we have seen what it is, a difference has happened by us not being able to see sewage on the roads on the south coast of this country. This is not an easy exercise, and with the best will in the world, it takes time. I'm satisfied that we will get on top of the water issues. I'm equally satisfied that the regrettable experience of ash across this entire nation made the situation appreciably more complex and difficult to manage, but we will deal with it. And while I'm on that, let me also address another issue that is of concern, and that is the issue that people in this country are experiencing at the Licensing Authority and Barbados Revenue Authority to get their cars licensed. it is unacceptable. The total applications that are still outstanding have literally been sent to us, and we've been tracking it now the last few days. We are hoping to automate systems in the next 6 weeks. We've received a proposal to look at doing it that way, but the bottom line is that many instances applications may be incomplete. In some instances, I think that there was some activity that we really did not like to see happening, and I'm waiting a fuller report on that. I say no more on that for now. And that I expect that this matter will be resolved equally in the next few weeks, as we've had to wrestle down other issues, literally, ministry by ministry or department by department, with respect to aged areas. And let me give you an example. A company reached out to me yesterday, for example, to say that they had received a check again that had been sent to them. I have told you over and over that we inherited problems with the software systems that we had at the Revenue Authority. And that's why one of the first things I had to do as Minister of Finance was literally to be able to write off debts owed, I think it was prior to 2000. I'm relying on a tired memory at this point. But that was in my first budget speech, largely because of the unreliability of the data. We are literally trying to extricate ourselves from all kinds of contracts and obligations that make no sense whatsoever, including at the Barbados Water Authority, where the issue of software codes continues to be contentious with respect to our capacity for the Barbados Water Authority to appropriately read meters automatically, as was intended when the last government procured the smart meters. Clearly, it has never happened. And this notion that we should have to pay more money in order to use a meter and to have the appropriate automaticity of reading that we expected when the meters were bought, we should not, years after, be struggling to be able to find access to being able to do that. And we hope that the codes would have been sent. There are issues, I'm told now, relating to other aspects of software, as well as other requests for payments. And this makes no sense, and I've asked the Director of Finance and Economic Affairs to get on top of this immediately and to ensure that no inappropriate advantage is taken of the Barbados government with respect to this matter. So, to end, there are some challenges, but we believe that we will get on top of them, particularly in the area of water. In fact, after the 6-hour meeting, while I was clearly made aware of the challenges, it is absolutely clear to me that it is not beyond our control to deal with them. But we do have real issues with the climate crisis and with the groundwater recharges, largely because of the fact of the absence of rain and the absence of replenishment of our aquifers. Having said that, I've said to Barbadians over and over, could we please conserve water? Could we please ensure that the things that we mindfully did without thinking twice, that we pause and recognize that there are some whose access to water is compromised by the excessive use of water elsewhere. We are also trying to come up with a clear framework and policy for the use of non-potable water, recognizing that many of the activities, and certainly in the cleaning up of the roads and in the cleaning up of public spaces, the government has been utilizing non-potable water for the most time. That has been the instructions given to the Ministry of Public Works and the Ministry of Housing as they undertake the cleanup, and I would imagine obviously similarly in the school systems as well. Having said that, it is going to take some time, and with the best will in the world, unless we get consistent rain, the dust will probably be with us for a few more weeks before we see any appreciable relief. I must tell you that the dust has done more to ensure 100% compliance with these masks than the words of any of us. And to that extent, we are grateful, as the old people would say, for small mercies. But I ask Barbadians to recognize that even in these challenges, that they are brought to test us, not to keep us down. And I know that we have it within us to rise to them, recognizing, however, that in life there are days, as I keep saying, that will not necessarily be sunny. And we're in one of those moments now. That is what happened in the early part of the 20th century. That is what is happening in the early part of the 21st century. So, my friends, to recap, we are doing well. We are still not yet, however, where we need to be. We can get there, and if we continue to stay the course, we will get there. Next week has 2 bank holidays. There will be many, 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 many more bank holidays. Do not let those 2 days put persons into difficulty, into getting into spaces and ignoring the protocols that we know that you need to. And for fear of persons forgetting, I'm going to remind you, wash your hands, sanitize, social distance, physical distance, and wear your mask. And once we can do that and we come through next week, good focus next week, Heroes Day and May Day, both are major days of significance in the national psyche of this country. Heroes who, by dint of their sacrifice, or by dint of their courage, or by dint of their commitment to excellence, have shown us how and where we must go. Similarly, persons who are workers know that without workers, this economy and this society cannot function. And as we give thanks for both of them, let us not lose the battle in this fight against COVID. With God on our side, we have no doubts nor fears. And I ask us please to stay the course until we meet again. The reality is that this period, as I said, is now 3 weeks as opposed to 2 weeks for the directive. And once Parliament approves it tomorrow, that should come into play literally from Monday evening. Thank you very much, and may I wish all of you a pleasant evening and a pleasant weekend. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Prime Minister. Let me end now by thanking again Prime Minister the Honourable Mia Amor-Motley, the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honourable Dale Marshall, the Minister of Health and Wellness, Lieutenant Colonel the Honourable Jeffrey Bostick, and you for joining. Good afternoon.